Good morning. Thank you for joining us for Space Station Live from the Mission Control Center located at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. On board the International Space Station, we have the Expedition 35 crew of NASA astronauts Tom Marshburn and Chris Cassidy, joined by Canadian Space Agency astronaut Chris Hadfield, who is serving as Expedition Commander. They're joined by cosmonauts Alexander Mazurkin, Pavel Vinogradov, and Roman Romanenko. The crew woke up at about 1 a.m. Central Time, which is the standard wake-up time for the crew. They usually have a few experiment sample collections and then some personal time for hygiene and breakfast before starting their tasks of the day. Some of the first activities included some data collections for Commander Chris Hadfield, who is participating in the Energy European Space Agency experiment. That is the 10-day experiment run that documents and studies the controlled diet and measuring of the oxygen intake of the crew members. This is the first of a 10-day run of that experiment. He also will be taking questions from students that will be part of a Canadian Space Agency education event partnering with Yuri's Night and TELUS World of Science in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Meanwhile, his counterparts, astronaut Chris Cassidy, continued with experiment work of his own, continuing with work on the BASS experiment that examines the burning and the extinction characteristics of a wide variety of fuel samples in microgravity and will guide strategies for extinguishing fires in microgravity. The results from this study will contribute to combustion computational models used in the design of fire detection and suppression systems in microgravity as well as on Earth. Cassidy will also work on space station spare server laptop work as well as some exercise sessions. He's also allocated for about an hour of continued adaptation and familiarization time aboard the International Space Station. Fellow astronaut Tom Marshburn worked on the water processing assembly software update and also resumed some work with Robonaut, the first humanoid robot in space. Today, he powered up Robonaut so that the ground team could work with the Robonaut to perform some tasks on the soft good box and also conduct some additional movement checkouts. That will be continuing throughout the crew day, and later Tom Marshburn will power down Robonaut and stow it. He's also working on changeouts of the recycling tank for the regenerative environmental control system as part of its periodic maintenance and performing software upgrades to the water processing assembly device. Astronaut Marshburn will also work with Chris Cassidy on some maintenance for the advanced resistive exercise device. They'll be completing some cylinder maintenance for the flywheel on that exercise hardware. He'll also collect some data collections for the NanoRacks research. Their Russian counterparts, cosmonauts Pavel Vinogradov and Roman Romanenko, continued preparations for their spacewalk planned for April 19th. They are charging the batteries on their Orlan spacesuits as well as gathering spacesuit tools and other personal gear for that EVA. They'll also spend some time studying the spacewalk tasks and translation paths that they'll use for that activity. During that planned excursion outside the station, the two cosmonauts will deploy and retrieve experiments and replace a retroreflector navigational aid on the exterior of the Zvezda service module. That will be later used by the European Space Agency's ATV, or Automated Transfer Vehicle number 4, when it approaches the station for its docking in June. That will wrap up the crew's activities. They'll have some personal time and their evening meal. They're scheduled for crew sleep at 4:30 p.m. Central Time.